Well, we're putting a mic stand up. Part of me is still in that last video. Part of me wants to say, maybe it's time we start thinking about reconciliation as not being an Indian problem. I hope I can. I would love to meet those two people one day. And I think with what I'm going to try and present today, it's in many ways the perfect lead-in. Because there's a lot of soul searching that needs to be done as members of a dominant culture. Now, one of the things that I've found when I've, trying to grow up and feel like I'm at home in the land is I've always wondered why. Can you imagine how strange it would be if you went to visit France and you didn't meet any people that speak French? It's always struck me as crazy that you could wander around in the Kootenays and not meet anybody that speaks Sinixt, Tanaha. Be up in Kamloops and not meet anybody that speaks Secwepemc. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is to try and find somebody who speaks at least a few words and maybe try and learn some myself. But if we're going to try and have a few words of one of the oldest languages that's been in the land here by the lakes, think we can try and do that?
Wai kuyayat, yayat e tumhulau, ul silk, Allah, minamul titit, min amul titit, chunchin, chun ul, minamul titit, sin tum nitum, chun ul nich, minamul titit, chunchin, chuk chuk, halt us. Quin atin puplaken in smum im etum hulau kokunmux.
Did I do that? Tumhalo. That's the word I recognize for land. And I thank Marilyn James very much for agreeing to have her voice recorded so that we could have some sense of what it is to speak Sinixt. So one of the things when I put in the write-up was that I managed to make it into my 30s as a single man. And it's not that I really had any trouble getting into relationships, I just had a heck of a time making them last. And I got around to starting to think maybe it wasn't just that there was something wrong with the women that I was meeting. So I realized I had to come up with some way of being me. And I can remember a Qigong master, no, a Kaido master down in San Francisco who said, well, Ray, if you want some chance of success, you're so messed up that you should start trying to date people you're not attracted to at all. Anyway. So I coined this term that I needed to become spouseable. And it was over a 2-year journey. But that process was interesting because it meant that I had to spend a lot of time going deep down inside myself, including things like when I went to sleep at night, I would imagine that I was next to my wife-to-be. It got so that over that time of about 2 years, it was as if I could feel her there. I knew what she felt like. It was as if I knew what she smelled like. On a really good night, it was as if I even knew what she tasted like. It was wonderful. And when I woke up in the morning, just before you wake up, there's that time just before you wake up, and she's still there. Amazing. And then anybody that I met during the day while I was traveling around and telling stories and singing songs and stuff like that, if they didn't feel like my spouse. They didn't smell like my spouse. Then they were a friend. There was no point in behaving spouse-like with them, no matter how spicy. And so when I thought about what's going on today, and with Canada now being officially 150 years old, it's like the Christian calendar starting at 2000, and you kind of wonder what happened before then and who was keeping track. And so I start at 150, and I think, my Lord, when I'm sitting in Scotland and I'm looking in the field and I look at that wall and I go, my Lord, that wall's been there for 450 years old. And the old shepherd standing beside me says, that's nothing. That one over there is 675. What was going on before that 150? And now that everybody's talking about reconciliation, what does that mean? And for me, I'm starting to ask, how do I become reconcilable? What do we need to do? What if, by some stretch of the imagination, there's nothing wrong in the First Nations population? Except what happened, much like happened in that video we just saw. What if? In fact, a mentor of mine said, part of the challenge here is that we, who have been living in this country the shortest amount of time, have lost our sense of village. And it's as if some kind of virus got into the water and it got into our eyes. And so we think we can see, but we don't know how to see village anymore. This is tricky, because if you meet somebody who lives in a village, you can't even recognize that they're in a village, so you can't learn the things that they have to teach us. You can't even recognize that there's value in the way that they are together that you might want to pick up. And it gets even worse. The virus might be in your nose, so you can't smell it. It might be in your ears, so you can't hear it. This is going to make it very difficult to lie asleep at night and imagine smelling, hearing, and tasting your spouse, tasting reconciliation. But there's some things that happen. I can honestly say that when I did my elementary school and my honors degree in economics and my master's degree in physical education and counseling, I became really proficient here. Well, I thought I was proficient. I didn't do very well on exams, but I thought I was pretty good, right around in here. But later, somebody's going to talk to you about education that comes from here, in the heart. And in fact, once I got involved in storytelling, it was indigenous people that helped me understand that the job of the storyteller is to help us remember ourselves. We don't find ourselves, we remember ourselves. It's as if it percolates up from inside us somehow. And what's the driver for that? Your heartbeat. It keeps pumping who you are into you. You just have to let it out. So what kinds of things would stop it from getting out? Well, that video showed one way of doing it. I'll tell you one that happened to me. It's not really that dramatic, really. I was in grade 2, and I loved to sing. And our grade 2 teacher, she got us all together, and there was a city-wide choir contest in Calgary. Now, Calgary wasn't quite the place that it is now, but that was a large city, and there were lots of schools there, and we would practice 3 times a week, and then as we were getting closer and closer to the competition, we'd practice every day for a little while. And we're coming right up to the day of the competition, and the day before, I'm just singing my guts out and having a great time and enjoying being part of the choir as we got ready for the competition. And then that last rehearsal, the teacher walked through the students in the choir to me and said, "Would you please not sing? We need you to be here because we need this many students. But just mouth the words, please." I didn't sing again for years. I didn't sing again for years. When I was doing my master's degree in physical education, I was taking some counseling courses because I was learning how to be with people. I was going to help them move from point A of health to point B of health. But we weren't learning any counseling skills. So I thought, well, I'll go and take some classes over in the counseling education department. And it was great. I got to learn some basic communication skills. I learned how to listen, which is really important if you're going to try and be a storyteller, even more important if you're going to try and help people. And I got to be in this class. It was a culture and gender class. And it was wonderful because it was the first time we really got to explore things like stereotypes and how they might hold people back. And so everybody was asked to bring a stereotype into the classroom. So there I was with 16 other women, one other guy, and a female professor. And I loved it in there. We were having a great time talking about things. Everybody brought in their symbols. And this one woman brought in this great little symbol. It just captured men perfectly. It was made of nuts and bolts. And if you ran your finger down its back, its little penis would stand up. Perfect little erection with a little screw on the end of it. It stood right up. And everybody broke up laughing, including me. So, oh, this is a great stereotype. I love it. The other man in the room said, just like Ray. And everybody kept laughing. It took me a long time in the process of becoming spousable to realize that my elementary school teacher recognized that I had a big voice, not a bad voice. If I could spend time with her now, she would have been the one who would have helped me continue singing as a young person through the rest of my life in Indiana University. As I was becoming spousable, and I think this is important in becoming reconcilable as well, I recognized that I did not trust men at all. And the thought that people would think of me as being typically male meant that I was untrustworthy. It was then I started to understand what happened to my mother because of her father. And for me, even worse, even though that had happened, my mother and father named me after him. So I had some work to do. I had to find a way of being with men so that I could learn to trust men. And not only that, I had to figure out how to be with women so I didn't just trust every woman. Can you imagine how out of balance it would be to just not trust men, period, but trust every woman? Nuts. No wonder I wasn't spousable. I spent a lot of time in healing circles. I spent a lot of time in sweat lodges. And an amazing thing happened. Every person I met with an indigenous background asked only one thing of me. Just one. Please be yourself. That was it. Speak your language, know your poetry, tell your stories, sing your songs, bring them to us. We want to hear them. Who you are is okay. I got the opportunity to go to Scotland to try and find out where my family was from. It was a great experience. I got to go and be at the Edinburgh Scottish International Storytelling Festival. But before I left, I got a phone call from a fellow who was in one of the sweat lodges I went to, and he said, I just told my elder what you were doing. Interesting, eh? I didn't have elders to go to, but he knew I was on a quest, so he went to an elder on my behalf. And then he called from Smithers down to Kamloops, and he said, Ray, my elder said I need to tell you a story. I said, great, I love stories. The story goes like this. When you're traveling, Ray, keep your eyes open, because you might meet somebody who carries an eagle feather, and you should know that that person has done something of great value, of great worth. And if you're lucky, you might meet somebody who carries 2 eagle feathers. And a lot of people know about that person probably because they have done great deeds that have been recognized. And if you're really, really lucky, you're going to meet somebody who carries 3 eagle feathers. And that person is known between villages, is known across the land. People may have heard the stories of their deeds without actually having met the person. Maybe you're going to meet somebody that has 4 eagle feathers. That person is known across the great waters. That person has a position of great rank and power. And Ray, you should know this is a Scottish story. I went, oh my God, we're not so different after all. Maybe there is a way in. Maybe the things I'm attracted to are the things that other people of indigenous culture are attracted to. So this is supposed to be about learning how to say hello. What I realized is that before you say hello, you kind of have to have a sense of who you are. When I've stepped on the land in Scotland, and then Ireland, and then England, something inside me switched on. I don't know how to explain it. But I noticed that people of indigenous background take this for granted. It's that switch where when you're walking on the land, it's like every rock speaks. It's like every blade of grass speaks. Every tree has a personality, and you can hear them. And sometimes they give you a song. And when I was in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, I started to hear things. And now, when I come back and I spend time with my neighbors and my kids and my friends, and when I get brave enough to reach out into some First Nations cultures, I hear differently. It's as if maybe a little bit of the virus in my ears has healed. At least I hope so. Thanks so much for spending time with me this evening. I hope you enjoy your dinner. There's some great folks that are going to be coming up a little bit later. I really appreciate your time.